this month. We are privileged to be able to host on Zoom. Thank you to the Republican Women's Club for allowing us to use their Zoom functions. And thank you all for attending and learning more about this penny sales tax, which we are all voting for on the November ballot. Plus, Steve Willis, the county administrator, is here to help spread information about the census and another referendum that will be on the November ballot. So I'd like to introduce Steve Willis, the administrator for Lancaster County. And I also want to feature our two other featured guests, are Stuart Graham and Bjorn Hansen, who both served on the Sales Tax Commission that vetted all of these projects. And without further ado, I kind of want to give the opportunity to Steve to introduce where the penny sales tax comes from, a little bit more of the history, and then we'll get into the deeper details with Stuart and Bjorn, because they're Indian Lands representatives on the commission and can kind of point out our finer details as they represent us. So without further ado, Steve Willis, the Lancaster County Administrator. Thank you for joining us today.
I do appreciate it. Let's see if this little green share screen thing will come up. Let's see, there we go. Share. Is the slideshow working?
Perfect. Yep, works great.
Right. Basically, tonight, we want to talk a little bit about the capital project sales tax, otherwise known as the penny sales tax. Would note that this is a continuation of an existing sales tax, presuming the voters approve on November the 3rd. This would not be an additional tax in addition to the ones as the current one rolls off. This would replace it. A little bit of history. In 2008, the very first capital project sales tax was approved by the voters, and that was to construct the current courthouse. When that was completed, 2014, sales tax 2 was approved. We had a number of road projects that were done, both county and state secondary roads. We did acquire a public safety radio communication system, handles all of our law enforcement, fire, EMS for the entire county. It is on the Palmetto 800 system, which gives capability to communicate with the highway patrol, SLED, game wardens, as well as surrounding agencies, Charlotte-Mecklenburg PD, for example, that are on 800 radio systems. And also the library systems. That is one that is still underway. We have improvements at all the libraries. Well, say improvements. We have improvements at 2. We're getting a new building for Kershaw. We're fortunate to acquire the former Wells Fargo building down there, but have an improvement mainly for the the ones I think that the group would be interested in, expanding the meeting room at the Indian Land Del Webb Library. One of the things that I just mentioned, this is probably going to be in sales tax 4. At some point, we're going to have another branch. It's inevitable, but we'll have to look at that at some point in the future. Right now, we want to go ahead and get the improvements done that the voters approved. That project is still underway. Hopefully about January or so, we'll have everything wrapped up on that. The only thing we'll have left on the roads are some of the state secondary roads that were on the second half pay-go project. We had some roads that were bonded, some were pay-go. You pay as you collect the money. We still have the state roads. We're wrapping up this year the county roads that were on pay-go. We have 14 projects that are going to be on the November ballot. The voters have to decide on this. It is a referendum. You can't pick and choose. You take them all or you take none of them. And again, as I mentioned earlier, by law, as county officials, we cannot advocate for or against any ballot question. We go to jail for stuff like that. So we're more than happy to provide any information that you need. If anybody wants additional information on any of the projects, we're more than happy to provide it. And I really have will will chime in because they had the hard part. They were on the group that selected it.
Guess who's doing the presentation?
Already mentioned it's a continuation. By law, the capital project sales tax dollars can only be spent on these projects. Cannot be go to the state, cannot be used for anything else, has to be spent on these projects. The current sales tax expires April 30th of 2022. The reason we're bringing it now, if we wait, this has to come at a November general election. So if we waited until November 2022, May rolls around, all the merchants have to reprogram the cash registers, take the penny off if the voters approve, got to reprogram the cash registers, put it back on. So by bringing it now, hopefully the voters will approve, and then the merchants can just continue on. There are some exemptions in state law, essential foods, prescription drugs, things of that. Of the current 14 projects, only one is proposed to be bonded, and that would be the detention center / magistrate's office. The other 13 would be pay-go, and that means as the funds come in, we would program those out. As you'll see on some of these, it's not really a problem, particularly on Highway 521 wide, and we've got to coordinate with NCDOT on that. Very first project, $30,133,800 in the current project is to go to a detention center and magistrate's office. Would note that we had a letter, I have it right here, dated April 30th, 2020 from Mr. Blake Taylor with the South Carolina Department of Corrections. Blake's a nice guy, originally from Heath Springs, but he's one of the jail inspectors and made it real clear we're building a new detention center. Only thing we're looking at here is how we're going to fund it. We're kind of in the same position we were at the courthouse. Chief Justice said, you're building a new courthouse. The question was, you're going to build it with property tax or you're going to build it with sales tax? We're in the same boat here. Just so the group will know, we did do some due diligence and looked at potentially expanding where we are. A couple of issues came up. The biggest one out there, when they built the detention center out on Pageland Highway following the jail fire back in 1978. I have no idea why. They built a detention center without a sprinkler system following the jail fire where we burned up a lot of inmates. So one of the things we were looking at is, we'd obviously have to bring it up to code. The water lines out there will not handle a fire sprinkler system. So our hands are pretty much tied. We're going to be looking at a new location. Obviously, we're going to have to make sure we have adequate water. But one of the things would certainly commend Sheriff Barry Fail, who's had a study group working on this. They are looking at the future. The core for this new detention center would be able to handle roughly 400 inmates. We're not going to build bed space for that many, but it would be expandable in the future. So you can really cut down on future expansion costs when the time comes. And Councilman Carnes may cover some of this. We had a space needs analysis presentation at Monday night's council meeting, and the census projections for the population growth in Lancaster County are just nothing pretty much short of astounding. So it's something that we're going to have. The next one is one that, I think a lot of the citizens like, road rehabilitation and resurfacing. Again, we're focusing this time a lot on county roads. When we did this previous sales tax, the DOT did not have the gas tax increase. Now they do. So we are focusing a lot on county roads. We have a list that is probably very hard to see. I have that in an Excel spreadsheet. If anybody's interested, more than happy to share it. Some of the roads, particularly in the Panhandle area, Ander Vincent, Bill Sweat, looking down through here, Hunter's Ridge, Harris Hill, 1,500,000, however far that will take us in the Legacy Park subdivision, Master Lane Sway off Harrisburg, Northfield Drive, which is where the recycling center is located, is included, subject to it becoming a county road. And we are trying to work with the owner right now. We have funding for Regent Parkway, Songbird off Calvin Hall, Smith Road off Marvin, Sway Lane, Walnut Creek Parkway from 521 to the bridge. That was the first section that was done. It really needs some work. And then we do have a highway safety project, Highway 5 at Riverside Road and Rebound Road. We would be expanding that intersection to include turn lanes there. The US 521 widening was a totally separate project, and we'll cover it in just a minute. So, but I didn't mention US 521. Don't worry, it's on there. Next one is Lindsay Pettis Greenway Phase 2s in the city of Lancaster. Will help expand that. Won't totally fund it, but we'll help expand it. And I'm gonna kind of just scoot through the ones that are not in the panhandle. If anybody has any questions, let me know. EMS Station 7 would be down in Heath Springs. The Lancaster County Airport new hangar. This is one that we're getting a lot of jet aircraft out there now, and we would have $900,000 to go towards a $1.5 million project. The remaining funding would come from the FAA for a jet hangar, private jet. We're not getting into commercial service. EMS Station 10. Now, this is one that would be up in the Panhandle. This would be located roughly across the street from Treetops, Van Wyck Road. And as we did with EMS Station 49 up on Old Bales, that was a station that's designed initially for 2. It could handle a 3rd station, keep up with the population growth. EMS Station 10 on Van Wyck Road would be built to handle 2 stations. So again, we can handle future growth while we're building now. Just wouldn't have the second ambulance there. The nursing program at USCL, that's a total $6 million project. We're contributing $1 million towards that, and might have read that they're expanding the nursing program at USCL. City of Lancaster Streetscape, that is in downtown Lancaster. Will handle 1 block of West Gay Street. Town of Kershaw, they have an old bank building. They received some funding to fix an early childhood education center, and we would contribute $1 million to go towards the 2nd floor, computer lab, things of that nature. Here's one that's a big one. I know that Councilman Carnes was pushing for that, and this is widening a portion of Highway 521. Would go from 4 lanes to 6 lanes from Marvin Road to the North Carolina line, about 1.4 miles. We'd be working with RFATs on this project. And my understanding is that the lanes would be added to the outside, would go from there. And if I could, at this point, Councilman Carnes, you might want to chime in. Councilman Carnes, if you don't know, is our county council representative on RFATs. And there's a potential to reallocate some funding since the State Infrastructure Bank funded some improvements on I-77 in York County that may help us. And Councilman Carnes, I don't know if you have any comments on that.
Yeah, we're working. We've talked. Go ahead, Evan.
Can you also explain what RFATs is for people who are listening and don't know?
Yes. RFATs is the Rock Hill Fort Mill Area Transportation Study. Every metropolitan area in the country has something similar to RFATs that helps coordinate the construction of roads in the areas that are densely populated. We also have in the COG basically does the same thing for rural areas in the county or in the state. So RFATs, we're working. We had money that was programmed for some intersection improvements along I-77, the Highway 160 intersection interchange, also the one at in Rock Hill that is near Home Depot. They're going to be working on that one as well. So we got funding from the State Infrastructure Bank for that, and part of that money would be coming back to be able to be reprogrammed again. So we are talking about having that put into the work program. It is on the RFAT's list of projects that's not funded. The other thing that we're working on trying to do, or we're going to be working on trying to do, is getting this on, getting funding from the State Infrastructure Bank as well. One of the members of RFATS is one of the members of the State Infrastructure Bank, and he has said that he would work with us on being, trying to work an application through there. We've also talked to RFATS about doing a study for 521, so it can more closely identify what we need to do from the state line down to Highway 75.
So we're keeping fingers crossed that may come to pass. Next project is in the city of Lancaster at USCL, pedestrian connections, bike connections to connect back to the city of Lancaster sidewalk network. Next one, town of Van Wyck. They want to build a community park next to their community center, $647,000 and change would go towards that project. Walnut Creek field improvements. Basically at the two main soccer fields, we would replace natural turf and go to synthetic turf. The new soccer fields on Harrisburg will have synthetic, and over time we would hopefully be able to transition to the synthetic fields. They can handle a lot more play, a lot of the wear and tear, and really improve the conditions of the fields. And last but not least, the Council on Aging, Indian Land Senior Center. That's one that the need is growing, and they're looking at a standalone center. We just didn't have room to expand in the proposed Indian Land Rec Center. We needed the space for recreational programs, and so that would be the final pay-go project. Total of $68,092,276. And that briefly is the what. And I think what the group would probably be more interested in hearing is Bjorn and Stewart talking about the why. They're the folks that actually heard these presentations and had to make an extremely tough decision on what they wanted to recommend for funding and what they didn't. So with that, I don't know who wants to go first, but I'll turn it over to Bjorn and Stewart.
Let's start with this question's for either Bjorn or Stewart. I want to know, how did you come up with the funding total? How did we come up with $68 million as the projected number?
I think that's a Steve question. This
Okay.
is Bjorn Hansen.
I'll be happy to tackle that one. We work with Burr Foreman Law Firm, used to be McNair Law Firm in Columbia, on our bonds. As part of that, we work with Bryant Newitt, Municipal Advisors, Financial Advisory Group, and they do a pro forma forecast on what they anticipate the sales tax may bring in. One of the things that we've seen this time, when times are good, you have some funding left over. When times are bad, it's nice to have a little bit of cushion. They're very conservative in their forecasting. I do appreciate, and the 68 million was their forecast. The 92,000, we figure we think we'll be able to cover that. But I'll recall back to the very first capital project sales tax, we got the courthouse kicked off, and then we had the crash of 2009. And I was convinced there's no way in the world we'll ever have enough collections to pay this thing off. And lo and behold, we did. This time, we're going to be in the same boat. There's a possibility there may be some additional funding left over, we're going to bid later this year on the final round of road projects. Once we have those bids and we can look at collections, probably next year, there may be a possibility that county council may be able to reallocate some of those funds. There was a budget proviso in this year's budget that would allow it for this year. Well, if you've been following what happened in the state budget just went poof. They're doing a continuing resolution. So hopefully next year we'd be able to do that, but that would still be plenty of time. The funding would be there. And if it's left over, council may be able to reallocate that to some additional road projects. Could not be anything other than road projects. That the budget proviso was specific to that. But that's where the funding number came from.
What about the previous project, the second iteration? How much money did that generate? So far.
And I'd have to go back and pull some of the records from the finance department. We were forecasting in the mid 70s. That was pre-COVID. Obviously, sales tax cratered for a while. It seems to be coming back. We've at least seen that on the hospitality tax, but the sales tax is actually collected by the South Carolina Department of Revenue and then sent to the county. And those generally run about 2 months behind. They're on a quarterly submittal, not monthly. And the state did have some delays on sales tax collections during COVID. So we're just now getting a handle on where some of that funding is going to come back.
All right, Bjorn, do you want to handle one of your first projects that you want to kind of delve deeper into the details?
Sure. So again, I was appointed by Councilman Carnes. I think that's correct. And we started meeting in, January or February, pre-COVID, and we only met 2 or 3 times, and then everything shut down, and we didn't meet again until we had a couple long afternoons in May where we reviewed each of these projects and figured out how to vote on them. I think we knew up front that the jail was a high priority project. It was very expensive. It was needed for a variety of reasons. We knew up front that it was going to get submitted, and it was, and thankfully there was some flexibility in how it was presented, in that it wasn't necessary for 100% of the cost of it to be paid for through the 1 cent. And that really was appreciated, because I don't think people want to vote for a jail. I think given the option, they're like, no, let them suffer. But this isn't what it's about. One, you have regulators from higher than Lancaster County saying that the jail is, it's just completely obsolete, and we're violating laws for safe treatment of the prisoners, as well as of the employees, the guards at the prison, the jail. And from a maintenance perspective, it's just a money pit. So it's something that had to be done. Now, I forget the percent of the facility cost that's being paid for through the to the proposed 1 cent, but that is something that, across the board, we understood the need for it, for safety, for just appropriate maintenance, for meeting current standards, and to provide for growth. I mean, we are a rapidly growing county, and unfortunately, we're not all saints, and there's going to be a need for a proportional increase in the capacity of that facility. So that was one that, I didn't necessarily, clamor to get on the committee because I wanted to help find out how to fund a jail, but it was something we knew we had to do.
Do you want to talk about how other projects were vetted?
Sure. Yeah, so really what we're looking at, we knew we had the detention center was a large piece. And then every single project was presented by the organization that submitted it. So we listened to each of the presentations and went through it. A couple of things that we were really looking at is especially with growth in the Panhandle, what was needed there, but also around where is that organization able to get funds from other places as well. So that was something that we looked at in vetting. Was the organization itself kicking in other funds? Were there other funds available through other avenues to show engagement? So that was something that continually that we were looking at as well, and then trying to make sure that we were looking at projects throughout the county and making sure that it wasn't focused on one specific section or not. And I think it represents the total projects that were submitted. When you look at demographics as far as where people are and ages and that sort of thing, it's a pretty good wide area of projects that cover everything from, for example, in Indian with the Walnut Creek field improvements with for Rex, we got parks in there. We've got EMS in there as well, and then all the way up to the senior center. And I think we all know about roads, and that's a frequently asked and talked about topic. I think getting the portion of almost $10 million into this as a separate line item outside of the road rehabilitation, I think was a huge deal. And we certainly recognized and knew, especially anybody that's running through Indian knows that 521 is a significant major artery to the entire county of Lancaster County. So getting that in there and getting money allocated for that, and then getting $13 million for other county roads, I think is a big deal as well.
Can you talk about any of the projects that you passed on and why they were passed on?
I'm trying to think. There was a number of the projects we didn't fully fund. For example, the Greenway. We're talking to the organization and trying to get a good feel about what is the critical need. What do they most need the money for, and what does that look like? So there's several ones that were that we basically didn't fully fund. Like the city of Lancaster submitted a total of 3 improvements in the city of Lancaster, and they basically prioritized 1 through 3. So we ended up just doing 1 instead of 3 with the city of Lancaster. I don't know, Born, do you have anything to add to that piece?
I would note there were several projects that we had to pull because of the lawsuit in Calhoun County. Some fire trucks, things of that nature that we had to pull. But I would certainly echo that the committee had a tough choice, and there were projects that got no funding. It just had a tough choice to make. But I'm a little biased, but I think they made the best choices.
Well, I'm looking
Go ahead.
I'm looking at the list that was initially submitted, and there were multiple road widenings like Marvin Road, Barberville Road, Doby's Bridge, Possum Hollow, and these were on the order of $10 million a mile. $12 million for Marvin Road, $30 million for Possum Hollow, and these were not considered in any way. And I think that's wise. The county has been very conservative in the past regarding the money that it spends on transportation. It wants to do simple maintenance projects because there's low risk. Putting pavement down on a road that already exists is far easier than widening a road or building a new road, because you don't have to purchase right of way, you don't have to move utilities, you don't have a lot of design or environmental reviews to go through, and the construction aspect of it is fairly simple. So the fact that the county was okay with putting close to $10 million for the 521 project I hope that we are able to partner with the South Carolina Department of Transportation to do a project and able to leverage this into something else. But you know, these other road widening projects that really weren't going to be competitive to get money elsewhere, I think it was wise that we passed on them.
I want to open up the floor to anybody who has any questions for any of our guests today. Does anybody have anything they want to ask before we start talking to Steve Wills about the other voter referendum that will be on the ballot in November? So just open up your mic if you have anything you want to say.
I want to thank everybody for participating tonight. And Steve, the PowerPoint was really excellent. My only question is, how did you decide the order?
The committee.
I would have thought that the two EMS stations would have been next to each other, for example.
That the committee decided the order of the projects, but again, some of them, because of coordination, it takes, you know, having two EMS stations at the same time, you know, especially as separated as they are, one in Heath Springs, one on Van Wyck Road, probably would not have worked. So I know on the 521 we have to coordinate with North Carolina DOT on that. So a lot of coordination, and the committee took that into consideration when they did the rankings.
All right, let's talk about the other part of the referendum.
All right, real quickly, there's going to be a second referendum question on the ballot in November, and this relates to the form of government. I'm going to cover it real quickly and then defer to Councilman Carnes for commentary on this one. In August, Council adopted the ordinance, and basically what we're proposing is to take to the voters to change the form of government from council administrator, which is our current form of government, to council manager. And that's the form of government used by York County. You would think with the difference between council administrator and council manager, there's got to be something in the hierarchy that's changing. There's absolutely nothing. The basic change is that under council administrator, the auditor and the treasurer must be elected. Under council manager, the auditor and treasurer may be elected or they may be appointed. It's at the discretion of county council. So basically, you know, two choices there: a no vote retains the current form, council administrator. Nothing really changes. A yes vote would change it to the council manager form. The two candidates that are running right now, because it's on the same ballot with the referendum question, would be allowed to serve their term. Now, auditor and treasurer are a little different. They don't serve January to January. They serve fiscal year. So they won't take office until July of 2021. And somewhere in 2024, council is going to have to pass an ordinance. Do they want to make those positions appointed? Do they want to leave them elected? It would be council's decision. Other than a change in title, I have no change in duties. The job duties of council, of the county administrator and the county manager, are both written in state law, and they're identical other than the title. By the time 2024 rolls around, I'll be retired, so we'll save a little money. The next person can have the title that says county manager, and I'll just stay county administrator even if it changes. So that's basically the referendum question. Councilman Carnes, any commentary?
This has been proposed several times since I've been on council by folks, and you know, it never really got traction. I don't think it's a secret that council was not felt that there could be better cooperation between the auditor's office and council if the person was hired. you know, one of the issues is there basically are no qualifications in state law for a person to be the auditor. You know, you would think that there would be something saying they have to have a financial background or some kind of background like that, but there's not. And, you know, I don't know if there's much more that's required for the treasurer's job. And, you know, we've got a great treasurer, and, you know, both the treasurer and the person running for auditor both agreed that they could support this being an appointed job or an elected job. So, they did have some say in the decision-making process.
Great. One last item, Steve. Do you mind talking about the census and just kind of some results about that?
Be happy to. As of now, the census is scheduled to end at the end of September. It was supposed to go to October. Federal government cut back. There's some lawsuits trying to keep it open to October. I have no idea what they're going to end up doing. But I think everybody's aware that we do it once every 10 years. The census determines an awful lot in the way of funding, whether it's educational funding, highway funding, funding for social services, schools. There's literally billions of dollars every year that are at stake based on census numbers. The folks in the Indian Land area have done outstanding. Our top 3 census tracts for folks that responded are all in Indian Land. So one of the things that may benefit the folks in Indian Land, we also have redistricting that comes about based on the new census numbers. We'll have to do that in 2021 for county council. The school district has historically followed the county council for their council districts. They're not obligated to, but historically they have. I'm assuming they probably will in 2021 again. That will take effect for the 2022 elections. Based on the projected numbers we've seen, there's no question Indian Land's getting a 3rd county council seat. That's pretty much a given. Question is, if we have exceedingly good turnout in the Indian Land area, not so good turnout in the other area, you may end up with at least part of a 4th seat up in the Indian Land area. Remains to be seen. We have to do the numbers. And I know, working with some of the groups in central and southern Lancaster County, they always say, well, there's other ways to get the numbers. And I have to tell them, I don't care. By law, the census are the numbers we have to use. So that's going to have a big part. I know on the House side, we're getting the 3rd House seat in Lancaster County. Somewhere in the PD, there's a House seat that's just going away. And we'll pick up a 3rd House seat. The House does those districts, but county council does the council districts. The current thinking is Councilman Honeycutt in District 4 has indicated he's not going to run again in 2022. Therefore, Council District 4 will just move up into the Panhandle area. Exactly where it ends up remains to be seen. And if you have any thoughts, talk to Councilman Carnes and Councilman Graham. One of the things that you might have seen is we can't gerrymander for any kind of discriminatory process, but it is legal to protect the incumbents. So you tend to draw the districts where the incumbents think that's their area they represent. They have some support. So we do have to start, I will note, with Council District 2. Charlene McGriff's district, that's our single minority district. Even though pre-clearance has gone away from the Department of Justice, the Voting Rights Act is still in effect. And I don't want to spend my last couple of years in federal court on a Voting Rights Act. So we're going to start with Council District 2. But one thing, the size of the council districts, if the current numbers hold, projections will be north of 100,000 in population. Council districts are going to be about 15,000 people each. So the numbers have grown tremendously. Councilman Carnes, I don't know if you have any comment on, you know, where you see some of the redistricting going, and also you might want to just cover real briefly some of the projections. You know, 2040, they were looking, we're somewhere between 180 and 190 in population.
Yeah,
You're muted, Councilman Carnes.
You muted again.
There we go. We're good.
all right. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. We had a space needs done, and for the future, because we have our capital improvement plan that we have to put together. So we decided to have a space needs done to project out what kind of space needs we'll need through 2040. And I don't have all the documents here. It was about a 80 or 90 page document, but I believe they said we needed to add about 50,000 square feet, Steve.
50,000 today, and then over the projected life of the study, about another 400,000 square feet.
So we have some tall things ahead of us. You know, obviously that's the very best scenario of what should be. We have to meet somewhere there in the middle. But there are also growth projections that we're going to not quite double in population, but we're going to be pushing north of 75% more people in the net by 2040. And, you know, we got to drive them around. We got to provide services for them. One of the proposals was to actually move the planning, building, zoning up out of the county building and move them north somewhere, because that's where they're doing most of their work. Would save a lot of drive time, would be putting people in the field sooner to work instead of having to drive from Lancaster up here. So we have not adopted that study, but we did get it and had a presentation on it on Monday night. So we'll be looking at that in the future, but it will be used in conjunction with the capital improvement plan.
Great. We saw some notes from our representative for ILAC, Claire. She wrote up some excellent notes on the county council meeting. So I want to thank our guests for coming and speaking today. It was incredibly informative, very helpful.
Evan, if I could very briefly, before I stop sharing my screen, turn it back over. The Indian Land Service Center, County Council approved Monday night. If you're voting absentee and you're worried about getting your ballot back in the mail, starting October 5th, when absentee voting opens, we will have a poll worker at the Indian Land Service Center. You can return your absentee ballot in person there. Don't have any worries about did it get turned in, and you save a stamp. So,
Steve, will that be put in a locked box by that person that we can physically watch them put it in a locked box?
The state law that they recently passed does not allow for a drop box. So what you have to do, it's strange, but we cannot have a box and have the voter put their ballot in the box.
Okay.
Voter has to hand it to the poll worker. The poll worker will then put it in the box.
That's good.
It's state law.
Okay. Just so it's in a locked box before it leaves the
It
building.
goes in a lock box every evening. It's brought to Lancaster and then stored. They did change the law. They are allowed the Sunday before Election Day to start opening the outer envelopes. Cannot start opening the inner envelopes until Tuesday morning, 7 o'clock. As of today, we were bumping 7,200 requests for absentee ballots. That's a huge number. Never seen that before. And I would note on October 5th, they did approve the change because of COVID. You don't have to have an excuse to vote early. You can vote in person, absentee at the county building. We're going to have it set up in the elections office. We're going to have overflow on the first floor lobby. So anybody that wants to vote in person absentee can do so starting October the 5th.
Great. Thank you so much.
One of the things folks need to remember, and this happens every election cycle, is if you request an absentee ballot, you can only turn that ballot in back to the election commission in Lancaster. You either have to mail it in or take it personally. If you take it to the poll, they're going to tell you you can't vote there. You've got to take it to Lancaster. So if you know anybody that is going to vote absentee, tell them to make sure they understand that that has to be done. And if they got a mail-in ballot, it's got to be taken back to Lancaster or to the service center.
Perfect. I appreciate the information. So let's talk. Our next meeting will be October 15th. We're going to be talking with some of the candidates that are running for office currently. I've reached out to all of the camps that will be on the ticket to submit a video for our website that's kind of tailored more towards the Indian land residents, something that is a message that might not make it to a TV spot or some sort of advertisement. So they're going to post videos on our website, and we will have a meeting October 15th. If you have any questions for any of the candidates, please reach out to us. We'll be able to forward it to the candidates and get any of your specific questions. So whether that's for state senator, for state representative, for U.S. senator, for any office that's seeking right now, we have reached out to everybody and hope to hear back from them. So our next Indian Land Action Council meeting will be October 15th, Thursday at 7 p.m. Thank you very much for attending, and thank you everybody for being a part of this group.
Good night.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Good night, everyone.